Okay, well, Michael, do you know what the leading cause of death for pregnant people is?
Pregnant people?
Mm-hmm.
Mothers? Women?
If you'd like to call them mothers, not all of them are mothers, but if you'd like to call them that.
What are they if they're not mothers?
They're pregnant people.
What people other than mothers are pregnant?
Does it bother you to use inclusive language? Well, since we've talked about the financial aspects of abortion and pregnancy, why don't we talk about the physical and mental aspects of it? Because that is really the heart of the bodily autonomy argument.
Sure. So the physical issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to recite these statistics for you. The percentage of women who get abortions because the baby poses a direct threat to their lives, it's a very small number.
And by
far less than 1%.
By direct threat to their lives, you mean they're going to lose their life?
Yep.
Okay, well, Michael, do you know what the leading cause of death for pregnant people is?
Pregnant people?
Mm-hmm.
Mothers? Women?
Michael says the words women and mothers as two words that could also describe people who get pregnant.
If you'd like to call them mothers, not all of them are mothers, but if you'd like to call them that.
What are they if they're not mothers?
They're pregnant people.
Michael owns Bronte again when he asks, what people other than mothers are pregnant, and she cannot answer.
What people other than mothers are pregnant?
Does it bother you to use inclusive language?
Instead, she condescends to Michael by asking him, does it bother you to use inclusive language? I don't know if Michael is bothered by using inclusive language, but I am bothered when people ask me to use allegedly inclusive language because it's not actually inclusive. Some of the inclusive language is also untrue. I think real inclusive language doesn't cancel out truth. Words like humankind or officer are two examples of words I would consider inclusive language, but when leftists say inclusive language, that's not what they mean. Leftists mean inclusive language as compelled speech because they demand that I talk a certain way and that I change my vocabulary to placate their feelings, even if it means saying untrue things. If Bronte really wanted to be inclusive, she would include those words, women and mother, in addition to her term pregnant people. But the fact that she almost seems offended by the word mother makes me think she doesn't want to be inclusive of women who consider themselves mothers after they've become pregnant. She only wants to include women who don't want their pregnancies. And she wants to use the term pregnant people to detach the concepts of pregnancy and motherhood.
Well,
It's just interesting
I
because-
prefer to use precise language.
Michael's answer to Bronte's question is once again that he prefers to use precise language. It's like Bronte can't use her ears properly. He has already mentioned that he uses simple, non-jargony Saxon words to describe things. Inclusive language is not precise. It is designed to muddy the waters up, and it's usually convoluted.
It's interesting because you come into this conversation, trying to hold this moral superiority, but then
I try to be moral when I can, but I...
Bronte realizes she has not shaken Michael with her question, so she projects a moral superiority complex onto Michael. Bronte thinks she is morally superior because of her willingness to use inclusive language, but she accuses Michael of moral superiority to cover up her inability to answer Michael's simple question of what people other than mothers are pregnant. The reason Bronte cannot answer is because she is beholden to the left's language rules, which is why inclusive language has nothing to do with inclusivity and has everything to do with compelling a person how to speak.
Right, but when I use inclusive language, which it only takes a couple extra syllables to use inclusive language,
To include
and
who?
it seems to include people who don't identify as women but can become pregnant.
Bronte says when I use inclusive language, which it only takes a couple extra syllables to use inclusive language, she is arguing that just because it's easy to do, people should do it. That's wrong because bad things can be easy. I'm not going to do something just because it's easy.
So, like a person who's born a woman and then identifies as a man and is pregnant.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that in order to be a moral person, I need to accept the idea that a man someone who is born a man and looks like a man can really become a woman. That's a prerequisite of my being a moral person.
I mean, yes. To me it is, because if you are trying to deny someone of their identity and deny what their life experience is, then that doesn't seem like a moral stance to me. I want to be accepting, and I want to respect people's life experiences and respect the way that they want to identify and respect the way that they want to present themselves to the world.
Saying I disagree with how you see yourself shouldn't take anything away from your life experience or identity if you are secure in it. If you are secure in your sense of self, what I say or don't say shouldn't matter to you at all. If you are insecure, however, and you are looking to someone else to make you feel better about yourself, then you will need to hear accepting words. You will need to have someone else accept your identity because you are not first accepting yourself.
Bronte, I would
Yes.
like to identify, I do identify actually, as the correct person on this issue of abortion. I identify as being correct and more correct than you on this issue. And I would just ask that you accept and affirm my identity. Do you?
Well, you are not a medical professional, and abortion and pregnancy
No, I'm
is
just
a
talking about
medical
my identity.
concern. That's not your identity.
That is my, I promise you, that's my identity. I promise you.
Michael proves that Bronte doesn't actually care about everyone's identity when he says he identifies as the correct person on this issue and she immediately rejects his identity. So Michael owns Bronte again.
That's very different from your sexual and gender identity.
How so? What I'm talking here involves the mind. I mean, don't you think? I'm not just talking about my gonads or something like that. I'm not just talking about my sexual appetites or desires. I'm talking about my mind, my capacity for reason, my judgment here. And so you're saying you don't respect that identity, but you do respect the identity of a man who believes himself to be a woman.
I'm saying that you are someone without medical training, and pregnancy is a medical condition and abortion is a medical procedure. And so we need to abide by the informed and knowledgeable opinions of medical experts. Again, you are entitled to your opinion, but you are not an informed and knowledgeable medical expert, so your opinion is not equal and should not override the opinions of medical experts on this issue. And they have stated unequivocally that abortion access is essential to comprehensive, evidence-based health care.
Bronte says that she only respects people who are medical professionals when it comes to the topic of medical issues. Once again, this is that college mentality where you didn't specialize in that field, so your opinion doesn't matter. That is insane. We have people like Dr. Fauci who went to college for medicine, but I don't trust a damn thing he says about any medical issues.
Bronte, are you a trained epistemologist?
Bronte's face after Michael says, "Are you a trained epistemologist?" is so great. She's so confused.
No,
You haven't studied epistemology.
no.
And yet, you are making claims about knowledge and how knowledge can be ascertained and expressed. But you're not trained in that. So it seems to me, if I'm not allowed to have opinions about abortion because I'm not a trained medical professional, you surely shouldn't be permitted to have opinions about how people hold opinions if you're not trained in the very study of knowledge, epistemology.
Michael asks if Bronte is a trained epistemologist because if only medical experts are allowed to have medical opinions, then Bronte shouldn't be allowed to have opinions about knowledge because she's not a trained epistemologist, which means a knowledge expert.
I'm sorry, if you have a heart condition, who do you go to? Do you go to your deli worker or do you go to a cardiologist?
Bronte knows Michael's right, doesn't want to admit it, so she deflects by asking a condescending question. Michael owns Bronte again.
But if you have a philosophical question, who do you go to?
This isn't a philosophical question. This is a
course
question
it is.
about, it's a question about medical access. This is a question about medical access.
No, well, ultimately, what we're talking about is human life, right? I mean, that's the reason it's a controversial issue.
Michael's right that the philosophical question lies beneath the whole argument for or against abortion, but Bronte doesn't get that.
Well, yes, but also pregnant people are living human lives. So we are
right.
talking about their life, and their life takes precedent when it comes to medical care.
Bronte says, well, yes, but also pregnant people are living human lives. So we are talking about their life, and their life takes precedent when it comes to medical care. She's saying that the woman's life takes precedent over her baby's life. Why are we looking at the lives of two humans in a hierarchical way? Both of their lives should be valued equally because they're both humans.
Right, but that's now you've moved out of the realm of the natural sciences. Now you're into the realm of the philosophical sciences.
No, this is a fundamental
something-
principle of medical ethics. This is a fundamental principle
of ethics, right.
of medical ethics.
Right, which is a species of ethics broadly. But you just said you're not a trained ethicist. Well, you said you're not a trained epistemologist. Maybe you're a trained ethicist, are you?
I'm trained in medicine, and we've had to take multiple courses in medical ethics. I have my master's in medical science. I'm a third-year medical
science,
student.
but not ethics or philosophy.
We have to take, I don't know if you know this, but when you are going through medical training, you are trained in ethics because otherwise doctors...
I should hope so. No, I should hope. I mean,
exactly.
I should hope that anybody who has any education at all would have some training in ethics. Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
But would you call yourself an expert in ethics and...
I would call myself knowledgeable, and also to be clear,
yeah, I would call myself knowledgeable.
Right, but to be
Lots of
clear,
things.
as I said at the beginning of this discussion, we're not sitting here just having a discussion about our differences in opinion. I am here to educate you and your viewers on the guidelines and the published statements of our country's leading medical experts, specifically the
Not even just the unpublished ones, but the published ones.
but the published ones, the published opinions of the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, who is our country's leading experts when it comes to the health and well-being of pregnant people. And they say unequivocally, and you can look, there's also publications from Harvard, from Colorado University, from Yale, name it. Our country's leading minds, state that abortion access is essential. So you are entitled to your opinion, but it is not equal to the opinion of people who train their entire lives to understand the subject deeply.
Well, if we're citing experts and the leading authorities, I would be remiss if I didn't cite the President's Council on Bioethical Inquiry, which in the middle of the 2000s assembled the nation's leading experts on bioethical questions from all of the top schools with all of the fanciest degrees, and they concluded that abortion is bioethically unacceptable. It's immoral, it's wrong, you can't do it. So I'm not quite sure why I'm supposed to trust the trade organization of American obstetricians over the bioethicists who certainly have far more expertise in this realm of knowledge than the obstetricians, who might be very good at delivering babies, but might not be quite as good at understanding matters of ethics and morality.
So obstetricians and gynecologists specialize in the health and well-being of pregnant people, and pregnancy affects the health and well-being of pregnant people.
But it also affects the babies.
Correct.
Yeah.
But when it comes to looking at a pregnant person, their health, when it comes to, a medical condition that it is between the life of the pregnant person and ending the pregnancy, the life of the pregnant person takes precedent unless otherwise specified by the pregnant person, because consent is everything.
So you're saying that the life of the mother takes precedent unless the mother says no. I don't. Okay. Now, again, the only reason I keep bringing up this matter of bioethics is that statement that you're making is not a statement that pertains to natural science. It's in the way that I would say, if you want to get a baby out, you use this clamp, or if you want to make an incision into an abdomen, you use this sort of knife or this instrument. When you say so-and-so's life takes precedence over someone else's life, that is a philosophical statement and an ethical statement, which is different than a statement about natural science.
Michael explains why this debate is a question of philosophy, which is that pitting human lives against each other is not a medical matter.
This glass is made up of certain chemicals or whatever. So that's why I think you're conflating those two realms here, and you're trying to trade expertise from one realm in the natural sciences into expertise in another realm, which would be philosophy and ethics. And I'm all for trying to bring these things together in a university-style way. You bring knowledge together because everything affects everything else. But I think it's just disingenuous to claim then that obstetricians are the be-all and end-all authorities on every single matter. It's also worth pointing out these threats to the life of the mother are threats to her actual life are exceptionally rare. I mean, far less than 1% of people who have abortions do so because of a threat to the life of the mother. There is no medical condition for which the treatment is abortion.
That's
though
actually incorrect.
it's
But
not
also,
incorrect.
as I asked you before, do you know the leading cause of death for pregnant people?
Bronte can't deny that, so she avoids the topic by asking him another question that has nothing to do with what he said.
I assume it's some comorbidity of, I don't know, obesity or heart disease or something involving preeclampsia. I don't know.
It's actually homicide.
Bronte's deflecting Michael by talking about homicide as being the #1 cause of death for pregnant women. Michael almost spits out his drink, which is kind of funny.
Homicide is the #1 cause of death for pregnant people.
#1 cause of death for babies and abortion, too. It is.
I think a lot of feminists like to claim that life is very dangerous for women in order to scare them into joining the feminist cause. People often give pregnant women their seat on public transportation, or help the pregnant woman carry something, or open a door for a pregnant woman. Good, decent people are generally very nice to pregnant women.
But we are talking about living, breathing people who are people's daughters, sisters, mothers. Did you know 59% of people who get abortions already have children? And so we're talking about them prioritizing their needs and their life, and you trying to limit their ability to care for their already existing children. And the #1 cause of death for pregnant people, you do, because being able to afford medical care for pregnancy and labor takes away from their ability to care for their already existing
children. In a very
children.
small way. It costs a lot of money to raise children. So if we're talking about $500 here or there, which again I think we already pointed out can be taken care of through any number of organizations, through the state and through private charity. But if we're talking about the difference of $500 here, the cost of raising a child to the age of 18 is enormous. It's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Correct.
And so if you won't be able to raise your children because of a $500 cost, then you're not going to raise your children anyway, right? You can't afford to raise them anyway because the total cost is just greater.
Michael brings up a good point. If you won't be able to raise your children because of a $500 cost, then you're not going to raise your children anyway, right? You can't afford to raise them anyway because the total cost is just too great. If you already have children, you are already incurring costs that you are probably well aware of. You are probably also very familiar with unexpected costs for your children. So all you have to do is be responsible with your money and have some funds set aside for those unexpected costs. Michael recognizes that the finance reason Bronte gives is actually more of an excuse to justify abortion.
A $500 cost is what the average cost of an abortion. The average cost of pregnancy and labor is $18,000 without insurance, about $3,000 with insurance. And so I don't, again, I see that you see yourself as a compassionate and moral person, but in order...
Bronte also talks about $500 being too expensive for people with existing children, which is why they should get abortions, so they can care for their existing children. Bronte deflects because she knows Michael just owned her again. She accuses Michael of seeing himself as morally superior than her, which is a projection because she thinks she's morally superior to him, because she thinks he's not being compassionate to women because of what he just said.
I strive to be. I don't know that I see myself that way, but I certainly strive to be.
It doesn't seem so when you try to consistently minimize these hardships that people are encountering, and you say it's not that much, it's not that big of a deal.
I just think that it is better for a mother to endure the discomfort and cost of pregnancy than it is for her to murder her child, is really what I think.
That's your opinion,
and
but it's
it's
also not your right to decide what the amount of risk someone should take, what amount of harm they should endure without their consent.
Why is that not my right?
Why is it not your right to decide what sort of risk that I should take over my body?
Yeah. Why is that not my right?
Because it is my body and I get to decide what kind of health risks that I accept.
But we've already established that especially in a self-governing republic, we pass all sorts of laws that restrict people's bodily autonomy, like drug laws. So why is it my right to pass a law against about you using heroin, but not my right to pass a law that prevents you from murdering your child. For that matter, we live in a self-governing republic. We have laws against murder that limits what people can do with their own bodies to somebody else in exactly the same way that a law against abortion would limit what you can do with your own body to another human being.
The purpose of laws in society are generally made to keep people safe, healthy, and able to live fulfilling lives. That's where the drug laws come in, because drugs are poison, and people shouldn't be poisoning themselves with drugs. That's Michael's point. Societal laws are designed to restrict what someone can do to and with their own bodies, in order to protect society from harm. Even if the person is their own worst enemy and they want to harm themselves, we shouldn't just let them because they want to. Again, some things are bad, and it's never okay to do bad things, even if you're only doing them to yourself.
Can you tell me a scenario where you can force someone to use their body to save the life of another individual?
Bronte deflects, of course, and asks Michael a question that has nothing to do with laws. Instead, she asks a question that describes motherhood. Bronte thinks she has gotten the upper hand on Michael because the answer to her question is obviously no. But what has actually happened is that Bronte has shown she knows motherhood is unique. She's also shown by the use of the word force in her question that she is not in favor of the natural way that humans reproduce. She also says, save the life of another individual. But since she's trying to describe pregnancy, save the life is wrong, because the mother is giving life to the baby, because the baby is growing inside her. It's not as if the baby is dying inside her and the mother's body is saving the baby's life.
Of a situation other than motherhood? No, I think motherhood is unique.
Okay, so you can't describe any other scenario where one human can be forced against their will to use their body to save the life of another person.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to a law that says, if you see a little kid drowning in a pool, you have an obligation to jump in the pool and pull the kid out. I mean, I think that would be perfectly reasonable.
That's not the same thing as using your internal organs and bodily
Oh, well, that's
resources.
different. Yeah, your internal organs, that would be unique to motherhood, yeah.
Right, and so the fact that there is no other scenario where you can force a living person to use their body to save the life of another person means that you are trying to grant fetuses rights that no other person on this earth has.
After the baby has been created, it grows inside the mother until it is ready to be born. This is a scientific fact of how humans reproduce. When Bronte says that Michael is trying to grant fetuses rights that no other person on this earth has, I think she is trying to conflate the concept of rights with the concept of science.
I think you're right to describe motherhood as a singular phenomenon. Yeah, it is unique.
And motherhood is something that half of the population can possibly experience. And the fact that there is half the population that will never have the possibility of experiencing that
It's a great pity for us.
Makes it so that when you are pushing for abortion bans, it is essentially a sexist issue, and you are creating...
When it's convenient for them, leftists will change their language to push their point. Earlier, Bronte was saying the phrase pregnant people, but now she's trying to argue a sexist angle. When she says motherhood is something that half of the population can possibly experience, and the fact that there is half the population that will never have the possibility of experiencing that, it means she knows that only women get pregnant. Acknowledging that only women can get pregnant is beneficial to her when she's accusing Michael of sexism.
Bronte, you know that the pro-life movement is mostly women, and you know that women are split 50-50 on the issue.
Michael fires back the fact that the pro-life movement is mostly made up of women and owns Bronte once again.
Also, it's not pro-life, it is anti-choice, because if you actually...
Whatever language you want to use. The movement against abortion...
Anti-choice.
Bronte evades Michael and claims that pro-life is the same as anti-choice to make him appear as if he has no compassion. When a pro-choice person says the word choice, to them that word means abortion. Pro-life actually includes 4 choices, which are abstinence, contraception, adoption, or motherhood. In reality, the pro-choice side only gives you 1 option, but the pro-life side gives you 4 options. The reason pro-life uses the word life is not because you don't get a choice. It is because all of the 4 choices result in life being upheld. If we replace the word choice in Bronte's statement with the word abortion, then Bronte's statement is true because pro-life is the same as anti-abortion.
The movement against abortion is mostly women, and women are split basically 50-50 in America on the issue. So to call it sexist or misogynist or whatever seems a little bit silly. It would seem to me that you are describing this as, the men forcing this on the women, but that just, if you look at the makeup of the movement against abortion, I call it the pro-life movement, and you look at the public opinion on abortion among women, is mostly women.
So the Pew Research Center actually did surveys and found that 61% of Americans feel that abortion should be accessible in all or most cases. 29% of Americans found that it should be accessible in cases of rape, incest, or to protect the life of the mother. And 9% of Americans thought,
Evasion. High evasion. Bronte evades Michael again and starts spouting statistics at him. She has no comeback, so she is trying to regain her credibility and seem intelligent because she knows all of these fancy numbers.
Hold on. Those numbers don't seem to, you're saying 61% of Americans say it should be available in all cases, and 29% say it should be available for victims of rape.
rape, incest, or for the life of the mother.
But why is that number small? I would imagine that the number would say, well, certainly women who face an existential risk from pregnancy, they should be able to have abortion. Wouldn't you expect that number to be higher?
Michael's confusion about the wording of the statistics proves why you cannot blindly accept statistics when somebody quotes them to you. Research centers are run by people, and people are biased, so there will always be a little bit of bias when somebody writes a survey.
You would expect it, but I think shows like yours...
I just wonder if you were misreading the statistics, because that doesn't seem credible to me.
No, you can look it up. It's on the Pew Research. It's by the Pew Research Center, and they found that...
It's strange. Why would the number go down for a more dire situation?
No, 29% of Americans think that it should only be accessible.
Oh, understood.
Only be accessible in those scenarios.
Got it.
Michael continues to question Bronte, and she finally reveals that there was a one-word difference in what she stated versus the actual statistic. This also proves Bronte's bias in the way she conveniently left out the word only. I think she left out the word only so she could throw in an accusation towards Michael's show, and only when Michael continued to question her did she reveal what the actual phrasing of the statistic was. Sneaky, Bronte, but I caught your deception.
And so I just want to make it clear that 29% of Americans think that it should only be accessible in cases of rape, incest, or the risk to life of the mother. And so you are, and I understand that might not even be the category that you find yourself in, and only 9% of Americans believe that it should never be legal. And so I just want to make it clear that you are in the minority on this issue, and your viewers might be as well.
The problem with the statistics, though, Bronte, is that, I'll just take your word for it on the Pew numbers, but you can look at any number of polls on this issue, from Pew to Gallup to Harvard-Harris to all of these other people. And so I can find one poll, I think it was Gallup, but I forget which one it was, that shows that only 6% of Americans believe that abortion should be legal in all circumstances. 94% of Americans believe that there should be some restrictions on abortion. And when you get even more granular on it, you look at the way that the questions are phrased, the numbers become even more malleable. So, there are lies, damned lies in statistics. I think just if you look at the way that people vote, you look at the way that people express their views through their elected representatives on questions of abortion, it is roughly split. That's why it's been a contentious issue for a very long time. And so, I suppose you can have your statistics from your credible research institute, and I guess I'll have mine.
Yeah, it's really easy to just discount statistics when you disagree with them.
No, but you're discounting my statistics.
Well, you didn't give me a source, you didn't give me anything like that.
I think it's Gallup, but I could be wrong on that.
My resources are actually, they're also from Gallup. Pew and Gallup, they published very similar numbers.
Oh, interesting. Well, I suppose I'll just have to go look it up.
Michael brings up the fact that there are other research institutions that do surveys that have different results. Bronte accuses him of discounting statistics just because you disagree with them, but he fires back and says that she was also doing the same thing. Then, she accuses him of not giving her a source, except he did.
I think it was Gallup.
Bronte switches gears and claims her resources are also from Gallup. Why would she do that? when she was very confident earlier that it was the Pew Research Center?
So the Pew Research Center actually did surveys.
I think it's because she knows that Michael is right. Michael owns Bronte again.
Yeah, please do.
But
I encourage your viewers to as well, because I really just want to reiterate that, you feel like this is a 50-50. America is really split, when really we are not. 61% of Americans feel that abortion should be accessible in all or most cases. That is the majority of Americans.
But Bronte, the thing is, and again, by my statistics, that those numbers are very different, and by the statistics at the pro-lifers site. But even if that were the case, let's say it's 61%. Okay, 61% are pro-abortion, 60% are pro-abortion, 40% are anti-abortion. So what? It's still roughly split, though by your numbers that's obviously much more favorable to the pro-abortion side. But so what? I mean, that doesn't, the mob of people killed Socrates. The mob of people chose Barabbas. Are we really saying that the measure of right and wrong is some conveniently selected public opinion poll?
Michael means so what, because polls do not make bad things good. Just because a majority of people want something, it doesn't change the morality of the thing. Just because a minority of people want something, it doesn't change the morality of the thing. Things are not good or bad based on how many people like the things. Guess what? Michael just owned Bronte again.
Well, if you would like another statistic, 95...
I don't want
Well, I'll give it to you anyways.
You're more than welcome to give it to me.
You're welcome.
Because she evaded his point by throwing another statistic at him.
95% of OBGYNs say that they would assist a patient in receiving an abortion regardless of their personal feelings about it. So
Bronte says 95% of OBGYNs, which means obstetricians and gynecologists, say that they would assist a patient in receiving an abortion regardless of their personal feelings about it. She means that even if a doctor thinks they are actually killing a little baby, they would still do it. And it seems kind of unbelievable. I think the way this statistic could be true is if all the doctors who refuse to perform abortions end up losing their jobs or quitting. This would leave only doctors who are willing to perform abortions in those hospitals, which could be how the percentage is so high.
That's crazy. So an LBGYN could think that what he or she is doing is actually murdering a baby, and then that person would do it anyway?
Because
wow, I certainly don't trust that person's judgment. Goodness gracious.
It is because of their, and that's why I bring it up. Because when we look at the people in our society who are trained to care for the health and well-being of pregnant people, even they understand, 95% of them understand that their personal feelings about this matter cannot override and should not override a patient's ability to access comprehensive medical care.
So why do they have those personal feelings at all?
Because your opinion, is about your body and your life alone. And
well, we've established we can have opinions about all sorts of things that aren't our own body.
Right, exactly. But as I said before, the leading cause of death for pregnant people is homicide. And I bring that up because you cannot pretend like you understand the situations that people find themselves in. People's lives...
So what you're telling me is that if a woman is threatened with murder by her boyfriend, because the boyfriend doesn't want her to be pregnant or something like that, that is why we need to basically give those women the option to kill their baby, because their psychopath boyfriends might murder them if they don't murder their own child. That's what you're telling me the solution is to these murderous boyfriends that you're describing?
Are you minimizing the threat to someone's life?
No, I just...
Bronte uses this tactic of trying to make Michael feel guilty. It's the "why don't you care about people's lives" style of question. She says, are you minimizing the threat to someone's life? This doesn't mean anything, because as I described earlier, Bronte doesn't actually care about the women. She only says she does. So Michael owned Bronte again.
Life.
No, I just think that I don't think the solution to a boyfriend threatening to kill a girlfriend if she doesn't kill her own child is to encourage the girlfriend to kill her own child.
We're not encouraging her. We are giving her the access to that option.
Wouldn't it be better to send in the civil authority to arrest the murderous boyfriend and protect the mother and the child?
In a perfect world, yes, but we don't live in that world.
What if the
Bronte's retort to Michael's question about sending in the civil authority confuses me. Don't we have police? I mean, yes, there was that whole defund the police nonsense, but we still have police and social services. We have those means, so for Bronte to dismiss that seems strange to me. If she's really compassionate about the woman's life, I would think she would be all for getting the abusive boyfriend arrested and thrown in jail.
World,
What if
Michael.
the mother who's afraid of being murdered by her boyfriend wants to keep her child, but she's afraid that she's going to get murdered, so she feels that it'll just be sort of safer for her to go kill the child, even if there was a video of this that just went viral recently, of a clearly abusive boyfriend who was trying to throw his pregnant girlfriend into a car to go get an abortion. It went viral, I think, about 6 months or so ago. And the woman clearly doesn't want to get the abortion, and the boyfriend really wants her to. It's the exact situation that you were describing. You think that the solution to that is to make it easier for the woman to get the abortion? To make it easier to give the murderous boyfriend what he wants?
Bronte's homicide statement she keeps bringing up is weak. If the boyfriend is a terrible abusive psychopath, his girlfriend gets pregnant, he wants her to get an abortion, and she gets it, all that will do is give him exactly what he wants. Just like Michael said, why should the girlfriend do the one thing that would guarantee she is stuck with the boyfriend? I thought Bronte was all about the woman's life. So if someone was actively trying to harm the girlfriend, why would Bronte encourage the girlfriend to do the very thing that would drive the girlfriend back into the arms of the very same person who was harming her? If the girlfriend said, no, I'm keeping this baby, maybe some of those boyfriends would leave the girlfriend. Yes, she would be alone and need to raise the child by herself, which is not easy. But she wouldn't be getting punched in the face every day by a psychopathic boyfriend.
What I am saying, well, no, because this entire thing is about consent. It's about the
Bronte uses the tactic of changing the subject to consent to evade Michael.
It's about the.
I don't think it's about consent.
You don't seem to respect consent.
No, I think
which
consent
seems
is
to be
important.
the heart of the issue.
No, well, you think it's the heart of the issue. I think the baby's heart is the heart of the issue. I think the baby's life is the heart of the issue.
And you think
consent plays a role in moral judgments, but it's not the only criterion that we consider when we come to moral decisions.
Michael then questions Bronte about consent and why she thinks it's the only criterion.
So, can I ask you,
Yeah.
why do you find it so easy to have compassion for a fetus or a baby that is non-autonomous and has absolutely no awareness of its own existence, but you find it so difficult to expand that compassion towards pregnant people?
Interesting that Bronte would talk about awareness, because she doesn't seem to have any regarding herself. Bronte says awareness in her statement has no awareness of its own existence. I think Bronte used the word awareness on purpose instead of consciousness. She is right that the baby doesn't have knowledge or perception because the baby doesn't know anything yet. Awareness comes later when people learn about and have perceptions about information. Awareness comes after birth. And when Bronte can't defend her position, she evades Michael again by accusing him of lack of compassion. I find it almost comical that Bronte seems to suffer from short-term memory loss because she's here talking about compassion for women when in the conversation before, she seems to not care about women who are in abusive relationships. She dismissed Michael when he said, why don't we just arrest the abusive boyfriend? Bronte rejected the idea of the woman keeping the baby who could be the woman's reason to get out of the abusive relationship.
Well, no, I don't think it's good for pregnant people, also known as mothers, to kill their children. I don't think it's good for them. I don't think it's good for the children. I also would have to push back on your argument that babies in the womb do not have any awareness. They do have some awareness, and they do react to their environments. They can kick, and they can move, and they can, when the mother eats something that's maybe a little spicy, the baby will actually get hiccups and things like that. And when you describe, I don't know, self-awareness, I mean, yeah, it's true the baby in the womb does not have consciousness. You know, is it not going to discourse on, Aristotle or something? But a 6-month-old baby isn't really conscious either, right? Certainly a newborn baby has no more consciousness than the baby in the womb does.
Michael gets the definition of consciousness wrong because he says the baby in the womb does not have consciousness. It's not going to discourse on Aristotle or something. When he mentions Aristotle, he is actually describing awareness because awareness means knowledge or perception of a situation or a fact. I think the words consciousness and awareness have been conflated by the left regarding the abortion debate just to confuse people.
They're conscious, just not aware. But also,
I mean, what do you mean by consciousness?
Bronte now brings up consciousness, and Michael asks her what she means by it.
First of all, are you aware, when we can talk about different numbers, but are you aware of the time in which 80% of abortions take place? Like the state of gestation?
Bronte cannot answer, so she evades him by throwing statistics at him again. So she doesn't even know what she means by consciousness, and she calls herself a medical student? Let's see. I'll answer Michael's question. When I think of consciousness, I think of being awake. Like when you wake up in the morning, you are conscious. If you get punched in the face and you get knocked out, you are unconscious. Now let's look at the dictionary definition of consciousness and see if I was right. Consciousness means the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. Look at that, I was right. It's amazing to me that a medical student cannot describe this simple concept. Should I be worried, Bronte?